Have you ever noticed how most of your suffering isn't caused by what's happening, but by what you're thinking? You're not drowning in the moment, you're drowning in your mind, overthinking, regretting, fearing, replaying. You keep waiting for peace to arrive someday, but that day never comes. Let me tell you the truth that Buddhism reveals so beautifully. Peace isn't waiting for you in the future, it's waiting for you to stop running. The moment you stop worrying is the moment life stops passing you by. You start to feel the air again, you start to hear your own heartbeat, you begin to live. Because real life doesn't begin when everything is perfect. Real life begins the moment you finally let go of the need to control it. 1. The present moment is the only place where life exists. When we worry, our minds begin to wander away from where life is actually happening. We start thinking about what might go wrong tomorrow, or what we should have done differently yesterday. These thoughts are like mental time machines, constantly pulling us into the future or dragging us into the past. But the truth is, the future hasn't happened yet, and the past is already gone. Neither of them can be touched or changed. The only thing we ever truly have is the present moment, this very breath, this very heartbeat, this single moment in time where life is quietly unfolding. Buddhist teachings emphasize that all freedom, peace, clarity, and joy are not found in some distant future or long-lost memory. They are only found here and now. The more we feed our worries with attention, the more we lose contact with this present moment, and the more we lose contact with now, the more anxious and disconnected we feel. It's like trying to enjoy a beautiful meal while constantly thinking about what you'll eat tomorrow. You miss the flavors, the texture, the experience. Life works the same way. If you are always lost in what might happen or stuck in what already happened, you miss the life that is happening right now. Every time you allow your thoughts to spiral around what could go wrong or what went wrong, you're not living, you're just thinking. Imagine standing by a river. The water is flowing gently, the trees are swaying, the birds are singing, but you're staring down at your phone, reading old messages and worrying about tomorrow's plans. In that moment, the river still flows, the wind still whispers, the world continues to breathe around you. But you are not really there. This is what worry does. It disconnects you from the beauty, the simplicity, and the peace that already surrounds you. But the good news is, the moment you realize this, you can return. You can come back to the now, not with force, but with awareness. By simply noticing your breath, the weight of your body, the sounds around you, you reconnect with what is real. You don't need to solve every problem or erase every regret to feel calm. You just need to come home to this moment. Because in this moment, your fears are not active. In this moment, your regrets are silent. In this moment, nothing is required of you but to be. And in that space, where your mind stops chasing and your heart begins to soften, something beautiful happens. A quiet joy arises. Not because everything is perfect, but because you're no longer lost in everything that isn't. That is the miracle of the present moment. It is the only place where life truly exists. And once you learn how to return to it, again and again, you realize you've had access to peace all along. You were just too busy worrying to feel it. 2. Worry is an attempt to control the uncontrollable. At its core, worry is the mind's desperate attempt to feel in control. When something in life feels uncertain, your health, your future, your relationships, the mind panics and starts trying to predict every possible outcome. It says, if I think hard enough, maybe I can prevent something bad from happening. This is where worry is born, not from real danger, but from the need for control in a world that is constantly changing. But the truth is, most of life is beyond our control. You cannot predict how people will behave, what tomorrow will bring, or how every situation will unfold. No matter how much you worry, you can't guarantee safety, success, or certainty. And that's the painful irony. While we think worry helps us stay safe, it actually traps us in a cycle of fear and stress without giving us real control at all. From a Buddhist perspective, this need to control comes from attachment, our deep emotional investment in how things should go. We become attached to specific outcomes, and when life begins to shift in unpredictable ways, as it always does, we resist. That resistance creates suffering. We think we're protecting ourselves, but in reality, we are just making ourselves more anxious, more exhausted, and more disconnected from the flow of life. Buddhism teaches us that freedom comes not from trying to force the river to flow our way, but from learning how to float with it. When you accept that things will happen as they're meant to, that you can only influence your actions, not control the universe, you begin to let go of mental tension that worry creates. You stop living in a world of imagined fears and start returning to the truth of what is. Let's say you have an important decision coming up. You don't know what the outcome will be, and your mind is flooded with anxiety. What if I fail? What if I make the wrong choice? What if everything goes wrong? These thoughts might feel productive, but they are not solving anything. They are only burning up your energy. Now imagine instead you take a deep breath, make the wisest decision you can in this moment, and then let go. You allow life to unfold as it will. That is not weakness. That is power. That is wisdom. To worry is to try and fight the waves of the ocean. You splash, you struggle, you exhaust yourself, but the waves keep coming. To let go is to float, not because the ocean changed, but because you did. Worry arises when we try to control things that are not ours to control. Peace begins the moment we realize this and choose instead to trust, not in a perfect outcome, but in our ability to meet whatever comes with calm, with clarity, and with compassion. The goal is not to eliminate all uncertainty. The goal is to become someone who is no longer afraid of it. 3. Everything you fear is temporary by nature. One of the most liberating truths in Buddhist wisdom is this: nothing lasts forever. Every emotion, every thought, every fear, every moment of pain, it all arises, stays for a while, and then eventually fades away. But when we're caught in the grip of worry or fear, it doesn't feel that way. In those moments, the anxiety feels endless. The fear feels permanent. The problem feels too big, too heavy, too impossible to carry. And that's the illusion the mind creates. An illusion that tells you this situation, this discomfort, this uncertainty is here to stay. But the truth is, everything you are worried about is already in the process of changing. Every situation that feels stuck is already moving. Even when you can't see it, even when nothing seems to shift on the outside, life is always flowing on the inside. Just as a river never holds the same water twice, no emotion ever stays the same. What you feel today will not be what you feel tomorrow. What feels overwhelming now will seem smaller with time. What hurts you in this season of life might become the very thing that teaches you compassion in the next. Buddhism calls this concept anicca, impermanence. Nothing in this world is fixed. Everything is constantly arising and passing away. And this is not just a philosophical idea, it's a deeply practical truth. If you look at your life, you'll see it clearly. Think about the things that once kept you up at night, the heartbreak that once shattered you, the decision that once filled you with doubt. Where are they now? Some have healed, some have faded, some have become stories you barely remember. And just like those, the thing you're worrying about today will pass too. But here's the mistake we often make. We treat temporary discomfort as if it's permanent pain. We let a passing emotion define our future. We let a single difficult moment shape our entire identity. We say, "I'll never feel better," when in truth we've always felt better eventually. The mind exaggerates the length and intensity of pain because it forgets that time is always moving and healing is always happening in the background, whether you notice it or not. The rain does not last forever. The night always turns into dawn. Even the strongest storm must eventually return to stillness. And so must your heart. Worry loses its grip when you begin to see it for what it really is. Not a permanent prison, but a passing visitor. It comes, it stays for a while, and it goes. You don't have to fight it. You don't have to panic when it appears. You simply breathe, observe, and wait. Like a wise monk watching the wind pass through the trees, you remain rooted in stillness, knowing that this moment, no matter how intense, is just one page in a much bigger story. You don't have to fix everything right now. You don't have to find all the answers today. You just have to remember this. This too shall pass. And not because you force it to, but because that is the nature of all things. Worry fades when you trust in impermanence. Fear softens when you see that even your darkest thoughts are not who you are. They are simply clouds passing through the sky of your awareness. You are not your worry. You are the sky. And no matter how long the storm lasts, the sky always remains, vast, clear, and untouched. That is your true nature. And when you live from that space, you no longer need to fear the weather. You simply wait for it to change, because it always, always does. 4. The more you resist worry, the stronger it becomes. There is a very subtle truth that most people never realize about their own suffering. What you resist, you unintentionally make stronger. The more you try to fight, fix, suppress, or deny your feelings, the more power you give them over your life. And nowhere is this more true than with worry. When you say, "I shouldn't feel anxious," or "I need to stop worrying right now," you are not calming your mind. You are actually arguing with it. You're turning your inner world into a battleground. And in Buddhism, we are taught that true peace can never grow in the soil of resistance. The mind is like water. When it's undisturbed, it becomes still and clear. But when you agitate it, when you stir it up with resistance, judgment, and self-criticism, it becomes cloudy and chaotic. Most of us are taught to run from uncomfortable feelings, to shut down our fears, to distract ourselves with noise, busyness, or constant activity. But this only buries the worry deeper into the mind, where it waits in silence, growing stronger beneath the surface. You can't outrun your mind. You can't escape anxiety by pretending it isn't there. What you resist does not leave. It waits. And the more you run, the more exhausted you become. This is where the Buddhist path offers something radically different. Instead of fighting the fear, you observe it. Instead of rejecting the worry, you sit with it gently. Imagine you are watching a storm outside your window. You don't scream at the clouds. You don't tell the thunder to stop. You simply watch. You let it pass. You know that eventually the storm will exhaust itself and move on. This is exactly how we are meant to relate to the storms inside us. In Buddhist meditation, we practice something called mindful awareness. It is the art of watching your thoughts and feelings without clinging to them and without pushing them away. You don't label the thought as bad. You don't try to replace it with something more positive. You simply breathe and observe it for what it is, a passing formation of the mind, no different than a breeze, no different than a shadow moving across the floor. And when you do this, something remarkable begins to happen. The thought loses its intensity. The feeling begins to loosen its grip. You start to realize that your worry was never as permanent or as powerful as it once seemed. It was just asking to be seen. Often worry is not a monster to destroy. It is a message waiting to be heard. Sometimes your mind worries because it's trying to protect you, even if it's doing it the wrong way. It remembers past pain and wants to keep you safe. But when you treat it like an enemy, you create inner conflict. Instead, when you approach your worry with kindness, curiosity, and compassion, you create space. And in that space, the worry softens. Letting go of resistance doesn't mean you allow yourself to drown in worry. It means you stop feeding it with fear. You stop arguing with it. You stop believing it defines you. You start creating a relationship with your thoughts where you can listen without reacting. This is what it means to develop emotional maturity. This is what it means to practice inner freedom. When a wave of anxiety rises, don't panic. Don't push. Don't run. Simply say to yourself, this is a moment of worry. I don't have to fight it. I only have to feel it. I only have to breathe through it. Because when you stop resisting what is, you start returning to what's real. The breath, the body, the stillness beneath the noise. The path to peace is not found by defeating your fear. It is found by no longer being afraid of it. When you stop turning your fear into the enemy, you stop giving it a reason to fight back. It's like holding tightly to a rope that's burning your hands. The more you pull, the more it hurts. But the moment you let go, not out of defeat, but out of wisdom, the pain begins to fade. Worry only survives in a mind that is trying to control what it doesn't understand. But when you let go of that control and replace it with awareness, trust, and compassion, you find that the storm inside you starts to quiet, not because you silenced it, but because you no longer needed to. 5. Attachment is the real source of worry. When you begin to look deeply at the root of your constant worry, beneath the thoughts, beneath the surface fears, you will often find one quiet but powerful force driving it all. Attachment. Attachment in Buddhist teaching is not about love or care. It is not the same as connection or compassion. Attachment is the clinging, the mental and emotional grip we place around people, outcomes, possessions, or identities that we believe we must have in order to be okay. It is the belief that I can only be happy if things go exactly the way I imagined, and it is this belief that plants the seeds of suffering. The Buddha taught that attachment is the root of all suffering, and when it comes to worry, this could not be more true. You worry because you're attached to an outcome. I need this job to work out or I'll fall apart. You worry because you're attached to a person. What if they leave me? What if they stop loving me? You worry because you're attached to a version of yourself. What if I fail and no one respects me anymore? The more tightly you hold on to something, the more your peace depends on it and the more fragile your inner world becomes. Because deep down, the heart knows that everything you cling to can change. Attachment turns natural uncertainty into unbearable tension. It makes you believe that unless everything goes your way, you cannot feel peace, cannot feel secure, cannot feel whole. But life doesn't work that way. Life is not a predictable machine. It's a living river, always moving, always shifting, always flowing in ways you can't fully control. And when you cling to the rocks in that river, demanding things stay the same, you suffer, you fight with life, you resist its natural rhythm. And in that resistance, worry grows. But here's the most beautiful realization. You can love without clinging. You can care deeply without being consumed. You can dream without becoming obsessed with the result. Buddhism doesn't teach us to stop loving life. It teaches us to hold it with open hands. Imagine holding a butterfly. If you squeeze it too tightly, you harm it. If you hold it too loosely, it may fly away. But if you let it rest gently on your hand, you can enjoy its beauty without trying to possess it. Life, too, is meant to be experienced this way. Letting go of attachment doesn't mean giving up. It means shifting your identity from someone who needs specific conditions to be okay to someone who is okay regardless of the conditions. It means realizing that your peace comes not from controlling what happens, but from how you relate to what happens. It's not the love that causes suffering. It's the belief that without that love, you are nothing. It's not the goal that brings pain. It's the fear that you won't survive without achieving it. When you free yourself from attachment, you don't stop caring. You start caring more wisely. You begin to understand that people, events, and experiences are all part of life's dance, and trying to freeze them in place only causes tension. You begin to see that true security does not come from trying to make the world bend to your will, but from developing an inner world that is unshakable, grounded in presence, in awareness, and in trust. This doesn't happen all at once. It's a practice. You catch yourself clinging and gently let go. You notice your tight grip on a relationship, a desire, or a fear, and you breathe into that tension. You soften. You choose presence over possession, and over time, your heart learns a new way of being, not rigid and fearful, but open and at ease. So the next time you find yourself overwhelmed by worry, ask yourself gently, what am I afraid to lose? And then ask the deeper question, who would I be if I let go of this fear? The answer is always the same. You would be free. Free not because you stopped caring, but because you stopped believing your life depended on controlling everything you care about. And in that freedom, there is no room for worry. There is only space. Space for peace. Space for joy. Space for life to flow, exactly as it is meant to. 6. Peace is a practice, not a product of perfect circumstances. One of the most common and misleading beliefs we hold is this: I'll feel peaceful once everything in my life is under control. We chase the idea that peace will arrive when our problems disappear, when our relationships are all in harmony, when our bank account is full, when our future is certain, when everyone treats us kindly, and when our to-do list is complete. But this is an illusion because the world never stops moving. Life never stops changing. And if you wait for the storm to stop before you learn how to be still, you'll spend your entire life waiting. In Buddhism, peace is not treated as something you find after life becomes quiet. It is treated as a discipline, a daily inner practice, something you cultivate in the middle of chaos, uncertainty, and pain. It's not a reward you receive when life is easy. It's a skill you develop when life is not. And that changes everything. You see, when you believe that your peace depends on your external environment being perfect, you give away your power. You become a victim of circumstances. You become reactive. If someone speaks to you harshly, you lose your calm. If something doesn't go as planned, you fall apart. Your inner state becomes fragile at the mercy of situations, emotions, and other people's behavior. You're not anchored. You're floating, drifting, pulled by every wave. But peace that is rooted in Buddhist wisdom is different. It does not depend on conditions. It depends on your relationship with those conditions. It asks, can you stay centered even when the world shakes? It asks, can you return to your breath when your thoughts spiral? It asks, can you be kind to your own heart even in the middle of fear? This is not about perfection, it's about presence. The truth is, peace isn't a final destination. It's a choice, and not a one-time choice, but a choice made again and again, especially when it's hardest. When your mind is racing with anxiety, you gently choose to come back to the breath. When things don't go as expected, you choose to accept rather than resist. When someone triggers your emotions, you choose to pause rather than explode. These small choices, repeated over time, reshape your entire experience of life. Think of it like this: peace is like a garden. If you only plant seeds and then walk away hoping for results, you'll come back to find weeds. But if you return to that garden daily, tend to the soil, water it with awareness, and remove the weeds of distraction and resistance, peace begins to grow. Not because the weather is perfect, but because you are consistent. The garden flourishes not by chance, but through care, and so does your mind. We must also recognize that there will be days where peace feels far away. That's okay. Buddhism does not expect us to be perfectly calm all the time. What it teaches us instead is compassion for ourselves, for our messy human emotions, and for our very real struggles. You don't have to be peaceful every minute to walk a peaceful path. You only need to remember your way back when you forget. When you treat peace like a practice, you stop chasing it. You stop saying, "I'll be calm when," and you start saying, "I can choose calm now." You stop searching for the perfect moment and realize that the only moment you ever have is this one. And in this moment, if you breathe, soften, and pay attention, peace will meet you right where you are. It's in the quiet sip of tea. It's in the feeling of sunlight on your skin. It's in the space between thoughts. It's in the acceptance of what is. It's in the breath you are taking right now. Peace is not waiting on the other side of achievement. It's not waiting for your stress to disappear or your life to become simple. It is here, always here, but it must be chosen again and again. And the more you choose it, not perfectly but patiently, the more it becomes your natural state. Worry will still visit, but it will no longer stay. Fear may arise, but it will no longer control you. You will begin to understand the most profound truth of all, that peace was never something to find. It was something to remember, something to practice, something that has always lived quietly inside you, just waiting for you to return. 7. You are not your worries. You are the one who observes them. Perhaps the most profound realization in Buddhist teaching is this: you are not your thoughts, your fears, or your worries. You are the awareness that sees them. This simple yet powerful insight has the potential to transform your entire relationship with your mind. Because the moment you realize you are not the voice in your head, but the presence that hears it, you reclaim the inner freedom you were always meant to have. Most people go through life fully identified with their thoughts. They believe every worry they think, every fear they feel, every anxious scenario they imagine. The mind says, "What if something bad happens?" And they react as if it's already real. The mind whispers, "You're not good enough," and they carry that belief like a burden on their back. But this is the great misunderstanding. The mind is not your enemy, but it is not you. It's a tool, a storyteller, a survival mechanism, and just like a radio broadcasting different stations, it constantly sends out thoughts, some helpful, some fearful, some completely untrue. But here's the key: you are not the broadcast. You are the one who listens. In Buddhism, this is called the practice of non-identification. It means recognizing that the thoughts that arise in your consciousness are not personal. They are simply patterns. Many of them are learned, inherited, or conditioned by your environment. You worry not because you are broken, but because your mind has been trained over years, maybe even decades, to fixate on problems, anticipate danger, and protect you from discomfort. But when you bring awareness to this, you begin to create distance. You begin to notice your thoughts like clouds drifting across the sky, instead of getting caught up in each one that appears. Picture this clearly. Your mind is like a stage, and thoughts are like actors playing their parts. Some are intense, some are fearful, and some are filled with hope. But you are just the audience. You can watch without stepping onto the stage. You can let the play continue without becoming part of the story. When worry shows up, you don't need to argue with it. You don't have to solve it. You simply observe it. You say, "Oh, there's worry again," and just like that, you're back in awareness. This space between the trigger and your response, between the thought arising and your reaction to it, is where your freedom exists. In that space, you hold the power to pause, to breathe, and to choose another response. You no longer need to follow every thought that pulls at your attention. You no longer need to believe every story your mind tells you. Just because a thought feels urgent doesn't mean it's real. Just because your mind shouts, "What if?" doesn't mean you have to respond. This is where peace begins, not from having no thoughts, but from your ability to notice them without getting lost in them. This kind of awareness isn't passive, it's deeply powerful, because the more you practice watching your mind, the more clearly you start to see that you are never the fear, never the doubt, never the anxiety. You are the calm beneath it all. You are the open sky, not the storm. You are the awareness that remains steady, no matter how loud the mind gets. Of course, this doesn't feel easy in the beginning. When a wave of fear hits you, it's easy to forget that you are not the wave. You are the ocean. But with practice, through mindfulness, meditation, and gentle awareness, you start to remember. And the more you remember, the less power worry has over you. You stop reacting. You stop panicking. You begin to observe. And in that observing, you find freedom. It's important to know this doesn't mean you become numb or uncaring. In fact, it's the opposite. You feel deeply, but you don't sink. You go through emotions, but you're no longer controlled by them. You still care, but you don't break under the weight of every passing thought. Because you've uncovered a deeper truth. You are not what your mind contains. You are the space where everything appears. And that space is always calm, always clear, always untouched by the noise. So the next time your mind starts spinning with worry, take a breath, place your hand gently on your heart, and say to yourself with kindness, "This is only a thought. I am the one who observes. I am not my fear." And notice what happens. Feel the space that opens up inside you. That space is your true self. And in that moment of remembering, life starts fresh. So now you understand, worry isn't something life forces on you. It's something the mind creates in its attempt to feel safe, certain, and in control. But the truth is, control is just an illusion. And fear is a habit that grows stronger the more you feed it. Real life, the kind that is peaceful, steady, and full of presence, doesn't begin when everything is solved. It begins when you stop trying to solve everything. It starts when you take a breath, come back to your body, and simply be present. The Buddha didn't teach us to run from life. He showed us how to wake up inside it. He taught that peace isn't found in a perfect world, but in a trained mind. That the end of suffering doesn't come from fixing the outside, but from changing how we relate to the inside. When you stop worrying, you don't become careless. You become clear. You begin to live with purpose, not fear. You start responding to life instead of reacting to it. You learn to flow instead of force. You come to see that the present moment is your true home. That you don't need to control everything to feel at ease. That everything you fear is already fading away. That fighting your thoughts only makes them louder. That holding on causes pain, and letting go brings peace. That calm isn't something you wait for, it's something you practice, and that you were never your worry. You were always the awareness behind it, quietly waiting for your return. So stop waiting for the perfect time to start living. This moment, this breath, is your way back to peace. Each time your mind pulls you into worry, gently bring yourself back, again and again, not with frustration, but with kindness, not with pressure, but with ease. Because every return is a quiet victory. Every pause is a step closer to freedom. Every breath is a chance to begin again. And when you live like this, not trying to fix everything, but learning to stay present with it all, worry no longer runs your life. Stillness does. Clarity does. Wisdom does. This is the path. This is the practice. And this is where true life finally begins.